Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Denali Borough Assembly, January 11th here in Cantwell, Alaska. We do not have any pending ordinances or anything else on the public hearing agenda for tonight. So we'll just go ahead and start the regular meeting. And to do that, I would ask Mayor Walker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Finally, thank you. I got the wall here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Walker. And I would then ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Here. Jeff Stinger. Richard Hammond.
Here.
Chris Isabel. Dominic Denali.
Here.
Tom Shreve.
Here.
David Alexander. Joe Chatfield.
Here.
Gary Zimmerman.
Here.
Ms. Sapone did let us know she's on her way. She'll be a few minutes late. And David Alexander, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay.
So, did we start?
Just start.
Sit next to you. Of course. Is there a motion to excuse Ms. Zapone?
That's second.
Okay, Mr. Shreve moved to excuse as a member, has been seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to excusing? Okay, hearing none, we'll call that unanimous and move on to public comments. And we do not have any public here. Well, we have Superintendent Polta in the audience here, but he's on the agenda a little bit later. And let's see, looks like we've got some partner reports maybe coming up, but any members of the public online or on the phone? Okay. All right. If anyone does care to join us, we will gladly take any public comments later in the meeting. Just get in touch with our clerk at, you can email us here during the meeting at publiccomment@denaliborough.com or call. You can call the office phone and get through to the meeting, or is there a way to, is that the best way to reach us tonight? Okay.
Or jump in.
Yeah, or yeah, go ahead and if you're watching the live stream, you can on the Borough website, you can find a link to just join us here on the Zoom meeting. So please do if you have anything you want to share. So close public comment and we'll move on to approving the agenda. Moved by Ms. Minor to approve, and it's been seconded. Any discussion on the agenda tonight? Anyone opposed to approving? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. And we'll move on to our minutes from our last meeting, December 14th. It's just a regular meeting minutes.
Move to approve. Minutes.
And moved by Ms. Minor to approve and seconded. Any discussion, changes to the minutes? Thanks as always for accurate minutes. Anyone opposed to approving the minutes? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. And that will, let's see, I did see Ms. Simon with Usability Coal Mine joined the Zoom meeting. We just closed public comment, but happy to entertain any comments if you want to speak to the meeting.
Oh, thanks so much. Nope, just hadn't been able to dial in for a while. So Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to partner reports. And Trooper Minor is here with us. Did you have a report you wanted to share tonight?
Just a short one.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Okay, just giving you an update of our staffing levels. We've got a trooper that's moving to Nenana the end of next month. So that'll help fill some of our holes, but we're also losing a trooper out of Cantwell. And I hope to get that filled hopefully by summer. So we are going to be a little bit shorthanded for a little while, but we'll make things work. I had a request from the public. If I'm going to give a phone number here that everybody should maybe save in their phone. Obviously, if there's an emergency, call 911. If it's not something that you think is an emergency, but it is still something that either medics or fire or law enforcement should be aware of, I'm going to give you our non-emergency dispatch number. Our non-emergency dispatch number is area code 907-451-5100. I don't mind getting calls. I get calls from people all the time, but I'm oftentimes telling them I'm off duty and calling them my troopers or call the dispatch number. But more important than that, we do have, we recently had a situation where a resident came across some people that had totaled their vehicle off the highway. They had actually been down an embankment and completely destroyed the vehicle. And ended up giving them a ride and arranging to have them transported to Fairbanks. Unfortunately, that vehicle was stolen. So it makes it a lot harder for us to do our jobs if people aren't willing to give us a quick call and say, hey, troopers, just letting you know, I found this car that was totaled. These two people that, you know, we're going to give them a ride, whatever. We can work with you on that and keep you safe as well. The other thing I would ask, so as far as crashes go, the troopers should be notified of any vehicle crashes that result in damage to vehicles that occur along the highway. If it happens on your own property and back into your own vehicle on your own property or back into the well casing, we don't need to know about that. But if it does occur along the highways, we need to know. We are not going to always respond to every single fender bender. Oftentimes we can handle some of those over the phone. We can even text people the forms that they need to fill out online. I text it to people all the time. Just being able to talk to the people involved over the phone, I can oftentimes ascertain if a trooper needs to physically go or not. So just kind of giving you an idea of some of the issues that we need to work with. Please also consider, especially this time of year, I know it's kind of sounds like I'm giving you conflicting info here, but when you do see a vehicle off into the ditch and it's a late night or whatnot, if you feel safe to do so, please consider stopping and making sure they're okay. And then giving us a call. We have had many times where ambulance have been dispatched, troopers have been dispatched to a vehicle, and we send a trooper 90 miles to go check on something. And when they get there, nobody's there, nobody bothered to give us a call. And we just now spent, you know, a good 3 hours of a trooper's time to drive somewhere, find the vehicle empty and drive back to where they came from. So please just give us a call, use that non-emergency number, say, hey, I found, you know, my neighbor put his car in the ditch or whatever. He called me for a ride. You don't need to send a trooper. That way we're not wasting valuable resources when we don't need to. I also have gotten quite a few calls from people within the subdivision. So this is just strictly related to the Tri-Valley HOA. I've had quite a few people calling. I don't know what, I have not kept completely up on the HOA and everything that's going on with the HOA rules and stuff like that. But many people have been inquiring about law enforcement responses regarding overnight accommodation guests in the subdivision. So I figured I'd answer that question right here and now so that everybody knows. I went back through 5 years of our stats. I have not one call for service for law enforcement to respond to non-resident guests at a overnight accommodation within the subdivision in the last 5 years. Most of our calls within the Tri-Valley HOA subdivision involve residents. Sometimes they're civil disputes, sometimes they're domestic violence, those types of things. They're not that frequent, but for those people who are wondering, maybe I can reduce some of those unnecessary calls. But there does not seem to be any correlation between overnight accommodations as far as residents partying or causing us as troopers an additional response to those homes or businesses within the subdivision, if that makes sense. During the summertime, the majority of our calls that are not related to the highway involving crashes and things like that, the majority of our calls are unfortunately related to seasonal employees. And none of those, as far as I'm aware, actually reside within that HOA subdivision. So usually we get a rash or a high number of calls at the beginning of season when they're just trying to figure out, and some of the employers are weeding out the bad apples, so to say. And then we get during the middle of the summer, it's kind of evens out. And then right near the end of the season, we end up with quite a few calls the last few weeks of the season as well. But just to answer that question, put it out there, and I'll answer any questions that the assembly has as well. But there doesn't seem to be any correlation. In fact, neither have I or any of my troopers responded to any law enforcement calls for service in the subdivision regarding overnight accommodations.
Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for the report. Any questions for Sergeant Minor? Okay, thanks for the update.
Thanks for having me.
And it looks like we also have Ms. Jusak with Discover Denali. Did you have a report for us this evening?
I do. One sec while I figure out where I am to turn everything back on. Oh, there we go. All right. Well, good evening. I am just very recently returned from Tucson, where I completed year 3 of the Institute for Organizational Management, which has proven to be a really valuable professional training that I've attended. And this year, I just want to give a quick thank you to Youth Valley Coal Mine, who hired the chamber to do their annual Christmas party. And between that and a scholarship I received from ATIA for professional development, I was able to do that at no cost to the chamber. And so just thanks to both of those organizations for that opportunity. Some of the training I had while I was there involves ethics in nonprofit organizations, budgeting, and financial projections, executive finance, strategic planning. And this is these courses are build on each other from year to year. And so some of the things dived into a deeper level than you had, for example, at year 1. And so just a reminder to anybody that's involved with nonprofits and might be listening that all of this information I have trainings to share with nonprofit boards or even businesses where it's applicable. And we offer that at no charge to nonprofits within the Denali Borough. So we can help with things like best board practices, board versus staff roles, fundamentals of board management, strategic planning, strategic innovation. So if there is anybody in a nonprofit who could use some advice or wants to send on a talk or have me do a board training, they just need to reach out. Which is also a good way just to segue into a reminder that the partnership channel with the Alaska Small Business Development Center that we currently have active is still open, and that is open through, I believe, August 31st of this year. Those courses are already are all accessible to our membership, but if there's anybody in the community that would like to attend any of those, they just need to contact me for registration information. And those cover a pretty wide variety. There's 20 different classes. So everything from starting a business to building your business for profit, bookkeeping basics, developing an LLC in Alaska and what that means, job search and resume. So those are on demand, which means you can take them at any time. You can watch half of one and come back to it later. You can watch them 2 or 3 times if you really find it interesting. And so just a reminder to the general public that those are available on request. They just need to call and email me for instructions on how to access them. We have a job fair in conjunction with the high school classes at Tri-Valley School. And actually, I'm not, it might actually be district wide. I'd have to double check with Mrs. Stickle and what she has arranged there, but that is February 21st. And so that gives any high school students who are interested the opportunity to meet with local employers and find out what jobs are available and what the qualifications for those would be, and then how to apply. We're doing some preliminary reach out work with DOT in preparation for the summer, and how that'll impact businesses and timelines. So we hope to have a pretty good assessment of that by the beginning of March. And then we've had some good news from the Park Service regarding the Pretty Rocks situation. So they did finally award the bid for that project, and it is to Granite Construction. And their initial kickoff planning session for that will be January 18th through the 20th. And they are on schedule for a 2023 spring start time, with estimates for that to conclude in spring of 2025. There have been some changes to the project, but nothing that should impact the schedule. Actually, they might benefit the schedule. One of the things that is changed is the bridge is now longer than it was originally going to be by about 150 feet. And that results in the required excavation of about 100,000 less cubic feet of material. So some areas might take longer, but clearly removing that much less material will have a significant impact on timeline as well. And the bridge will also be a little taller for the engineering aspects of making it longer. And then the current design includes 24 thermal siphons at the eastern edge that over about 650 square feet, which is designed really to prevent more permafrost from melting as that structural support is put in place for the bridge. And hopefully that will prevent further acceleration of that melting that's there as they dive into that project. So some good news on that front. And in terms of the visitor side, in 2022, we ran our first ever Best of Denali Awards. We had some good voting, and we're going to start awarding those next week. We're going to do 3 a week through the end of February. It covers 18 different categories. And so if you're interested in following that, pay attention to Discover Denali's social media as those are released. And if just think it's a neat way for visitors and locals alike to share where they like to go and what they like to experience, and give the visitors to our area some ideas of what to check out. So be sure to say thank you to those businesses. We are finalizing production of our magazine. Unfortunately, our designer had a family emergency that put us a little behind, but we're almost done with that. And the 2023 vacation planner should be out soon. And part of what's in there, over the last year, we got really heavy into QR codes, and they were very heavily utilized, especially the ones for places to eat and things to do. And so we're adding to that a Discover Denali Google map that has all of our membership on it. And that QR code is going to be in our new publication, as well as around town. Anybody who interacts with tourists in any way knows they can often spend a lot of time explaining where something is and how to get there, and how long it'll take in relation. So we hope that will clear up a lot of those details and make it easier for local people and staff for local businesses to explain, but also for guests to kind of find their way around the community. And I think that's about it. Any questions? Oh, actually, I do have one more thing to add. This is something we had kind of jumped on prior to this last training I completed, that I learned from another executive director out of the Wasilla Chamber. And we're going to a new format, which is kind of the industry standard these days for nonprofits, excuse me. We're going to a 6-month meeting schedule with the tweak in that each meeting has a designated purpose. And so, for example, the chamber meetings will be February, April, May, June, with a break for the summer, and then resuming again in September and November. And each meeting is specific to an area that really could use a deeper dive, and sometimes you get into it almost more turn our meetings into work sessions. And so, for example, the February meeting is for special projects, the director evaluation, and then beginning planning for our annual banquet. April is budget planning, and election prep, and from there. And so this is a new thing to our organization, but that's been used other areas, and is kind of recognized lately as a nonprofit best practice standard. And so we're excited to have the opportunity to just kind of dive into things deeper on a different level. And so if there's anybody else who's interested in that model as well, happy to share that information.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jusak, for your work and for the great report.
Have a good meeting. Trying to figure out how to turn myself off again.
It's not working tonight.
Say that again?
Our YouTube link is not working right now. It says it needs to be verified.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to do that while podcasting.
Yep.
So when we're done with the meeting, I will upload it. Currently on Facebook, I'm the only one watching, so I'm not sure this is a big impact
Okay.
at the moment.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure everybody knows that
Or the-
it's on Facebook.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And yep, apologies to anybody listening in the future that you missed us live. All right. We are to the school district report. And Superintendent Polta has joined us. Thanks.
Good to see everybody tonight. I'd like to start off with an appreciation. It actually goes out to First Student and their driver, Mike Farr, who's based out of Keeley, Tri-Valley area. I think it was last day of school before break, our activity bus actually started breaking down on the way to Fairbanks and safely made it into a pullout. Everybody was safe, but then we have kids there trying to get to Fairbanks for some hockey games, and they were able to there's parents traveling, so the kids were able to kind of come in with parents and get there. But as soon as we found out about it, we immediately got a call and said, okay, well, First Student, can you get a bus there? Like, I don't even need to know, is a parent going to be there or not? Do we have a bus to make sure that nobody is left at the side of the road? And immediately they went, yeah, okay. And I got a call back from Susan, their local manager, like 3 minutes later, and said, yeah, Mike's headed over to the bus barn, he's going to drive up. So before we even had anything else happening, we had a bus headed out to make sure that, those kids were going to be safe out there. They were safe well before that. Parents were able to get everybody in vehicles, get up and get to their games. We kept the bus going so that they could have a lot easier time getting back with the kids and all that big hockey gear. So really appreciate First Student and Mike's help with that. It wasn't something they expected to do or had planned to do. And just nice to know that they were able to come together and give that help. Moving into my written report, I'll highlight a few things and add a detail to it. Underneath strategic planning, just wanted to let you know that the district was selected by the department to join a group of school districts that they're helping refresh and update their system of intervening with students who are kind of performing at below grade level, below expectation. Formerly, the system's called response to intervention, meaning our students responding to our instructional intervention, or in another kind of paraphrase of the same, multi-tiered system of support, meaning the different tiers, different ways that we support students different. Part of being in that cohort with the state is they're going to just help us kind of guide through that review and update of our internal process. And they're also providing a little bit of financial support in sending our 4 local participants in that cohort to a conference in January that a lot of our teachers are going to, the RTI MTSS conference, and then also a conference in April, which is the Alaska Science of Reading Symposium. So appreciate both the technical help and also that help in terms of getting those people to those conferences. So I'll come back to the budget stuff because that's always more fun. It tends to be a bit more. Some updates on facilities. I do have to give credit to Deed for reviewing all the detail and paperwork on the Anderson roof, because they actually did find out. Curtis, on one of the reports, had typed in that he had, I think, had spent 56 hours supervising the project, because that's part of like the administrative cost that's a part of that. And he went, wait a minute, you said you did that in like, this period of time, it doesn't fit. And they noticed he just used the wrong finger, typed 5 instead of 3. So good job on Deed. It's now, that's the only thing they found. So hopefully, again, that's going to release those funds anytime soon. With the Tri-Valley Roof Project, Design Alaska is now working on the 65% design drawings. We've been supplying some photographs and measurements of different parts of the school, some of the internal sections that they're like, oh, we kind of want to get a drain going here. So how much space do we have? What's that really look like? So trying to help them get that information. Rural Energy Solutions is still working on that engineering design for the solar, hoping that they get it done soon because the sun's actually going to come up pretty soon. It'd be nice to be able to turn those on. Got a similar kind of utility issue. Tri-Valley Coal, our transmission in our ash auger. It was in ash auger, it might have been in silo. I think it was in the ash part. Something kind of broke in the transmission, and it's installed up at the ceiling of this thing, and it's like 300 or 400 pounds. So the first thing was kind of scratching heads around, like, how do we get that thing down and look at it? They're able to figure that out. They've done a repair on it, and it's like, okay, this is working. Or it's like, we think this is going to work. And they're smart enough to go, let's really test this before we lift the thing back up and install it. So we have been running on oil for a couple of weeks and hope to be back on coal pretty soon. They're confident in the repair. They just want to make sure so they don't have to deal with pulling that thing out of the ceiling yet again. Here in Cantwell, we have multiple furnaces, and one of those furnaces actually went out. It's in one of the kind of back rooms here. So, and it's so old, we've really struggled finding a motor to replace the motor that went out. Curtis was able to find a motor, and so we've got an order. It's on the way here, so we can get that up and running. In the meantime, we just made sure to kind of leave those doors open, keep heat moving in, monitor the temperatures. Really bad cold snap. Push the air in. It's like 3 structural damage. Got some really great news on facilities and through help with the borough. Connected with an organization with the federal government that's helping agencies and school districts apply for some of the funding under the infrastructure grant or infrastructure bill that was passed. The one area that really focuses on schools, like the only aspect of schools, is on energy improvement. And so we are putting together a grant application for that. It's going to focus at Tri-Valley School. Some of that's kind of overall budget expressions, and really the fact that the grant itself is going to be limited in terms of its size. At maximum, it will support $1.5 million project. And so we've put together a project that's really close to that limit at Tri-Valley that focuses on 3 things. And the big thing is an update and upgrade to all the doors and windows at the school. That's like a big thing. If you look at some of the windows, you actually see some of the like reflective sheeting that goes on the inside of double and triple pane windows. It's actually peeling off of our windows. So having those updated will be a great savings, and I think real comfort factor into the schools. Other things that the grant will include would be update to the Siemens control panels, so possible source of funding for those, as well as additional solar panels that would be installed on the roof of the school, specifically over the sections that the roof renovation is doing, because that roof renovation is installing fixtures that we can install solar panels to without damaging and penetrating any aspect. We'll see how that goes. There's an overall limit to, I think, the amount of money available through these projects within the state. So it'll be kind of a competitive process through that. But we have jumped on it, and we're hopeful that we can put together a good grant application and hopefully be a recipient of that. A couple staffing updates, especially here at Cantwell. I did want to acknowledge that we did formally accept the resignation of Kate Santos. She's a teacher here. She's been on leave for this year. But the kind of issues and stuff in her personal life indicated that she's not able to return to service with the district next year. And at this point, she made a decision to resign. We've also accepted resignation from a teacher, Judy Sweeney, who works at our Anchorage office in Denali. But on the addition side, teacher Maria Cordova has arrived. I believe I told you at the start of December, she has been working, integrating her services with the services already in place at Tri-Valley School and really helping kind of at this point focusing on kind of more elementary end of services, where Emma is continuing kind of focusing on that secondaries. Let's say one of the new students at Tri-Valley this January, in his first day of school, it was one of Maria's kids. And I saw him the next day. I was driving him to school with the family. How was school? And he said, and he goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was 3 above 10. But I asked him today, and he just said it was a 10.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Other things we put at Tri-Valley, we have advertised for a full-time teaching assistant and a lunch recess assistant. That's based on some additional enrollment changes that have happened now in January. Some student needs that we need to fill. On kind of the big thing that we're looking at, and it is kind of like that big kind of complex thing, the budget update. I did I think a fairly comprehensive update with the assembly in December. And that underlying scenario still exists. The fact that the district right now is operating on an operational deficit for this year, close to $400,000. Then we have several sources of kind of one-time funding. I think in aggregate comes together to about $550,000. As these things continue in the next year and the one-time sources really go away, that's a really significant deficit for us if our operation stays. So in working with the board and again, kind of through revisions with finance committee, just with administration, looking at various scenarios to say, well, what might our district do? And really trying to focus first on 2 scenarios that the board directed us to. One is to continue our operations at all 3 of our brick and mortar sites, as well as Denali. The second scenario would be consolidate our brick and mortar sites into a single site at Tri. In doing the kind of first round in revisions with that, no scenario came close to meeting the budget goals set by the board. And the budget goals were stable enrollment, statutory funding levels from the state, full contribution from the borough, and then look for what cost reductions and efficiencies could you find in non-personnel ways, and then if you need to, have personnel costs. And so all the scenarios that we're looking at, even with pretty significant reductions in personnel costs, we're still way out of balance. And that goal that the board said still would have us operate next year with $150,000. Still be using money from our carryover funds to pay for operations. Met with the finance committee last night and talked through those scenarios, looked at kind of different aspects and some things that we can do. And the finance committee is taking some steps, making recommendations to me and carrying forward to the board. And 2 big things that really would shift kind of that revenue side. And a somewhat risky, or a move that would have some risk to it, but there is some logic to it, would be to say, assume there will be an increase to the base student allocation. And it's very hard to say, well, what might that level be? Because we've seen the budget from Governor Dunleavy at 0. We hear that the Senate majority coalition is likely to introduce a bill that has an amount close to maybe $850. So there's a big range in there. I would say, I don't think it's going to be 0. Don't really think it's going to be 850, given the just challenges of state budgets. In talking with the board's finance committee, we did feel the one number in between those that we said there's logic to this number is to say the one level of one-time funding provided by the state for the current year. Let's assume that continues. Like, hopefully people can see the sanity of at least continuing that. for us, kind of depending on how that kind of settles out through enrollment all the way across the state, looking at upward of $300,000 of additional revenue in terms of our budgeting aspect. The other thing we did is to say, let's use some of our dedicated reserves and specifically use money from our transportation fund that had built up in previous years to cover the overages and student transportation costs that's no longer supported by the state aid provided for student transportation. And that shifts again, operating costs to reserves of about $80,000. We looked at that. We looked at, again, some more refined staffing adjustments, additional cost saving measures. And now when we look at those scenarios, I go, these meet, either almost meet within $50,000, $75,000, the budget, the board's goal of that $250,000 deficit, or have a little bit lower deficit than that. But the scenarios still continue to have staff reduction. That position is raised through some staff contrition. Sometimes, I think in the full operating, with all of our sites, more positions as it's kind of pulled down in different places to try to maintain the sites open with their fixed costs. But even the consolidated, I'm sorry, trying to remember, all have staff reduction. I'll probably just leave it at that and not get into too much detail. We even did a scenario of looking at a consolidation of just consolidating Cantwell into Tri-Valley, maintaining the site in Anderson. And it was interesting actually seeing that as possibly the most, assuming we have stable enrollment, because that continues to have that site as a revenue center, might be equal or just slightly financially better by about $50,000 than a full consolidation, which was an interesting thing to notice when we ran those figures. A lot of unknown things about our budget, though. So a lot of stuff is in flux with that. Sure.
One question on that specific point, and is that because the state aid for the school building in Anderson? Is that why that little bit counterintuitive thing is there? Like, is that where that's extra money that comes in because there's a second facility?
Roughly. And some of it's built on an assumption that if we consolidate, not all the students will transition to Tri-Valley.
Yeah.
We've built a consolidated budget assuming half of the students will. I personally think that's a generous assumption. So some of it's built on the assumption that if it stays open, enrollment would be unchanged. I think it will change regardless of what the district does in terms of operating the school. I think there'll be changes in Anderson. I base that on what parents are telling the school district. That's one of the things that makes it hard to plan a school budget. We are basing a budget that is funded on next year's enrollment. That is ultimately a hard thing.
Are any of them interested in doing homeschool through peak if they were not to transition to Tri-Valley? Does any of them?
The specific ones that I've heard from, or that the site administrators heard from,
Yeah.
That's not there.
Okay.
And some of that is like with Anderson, starting with one family, there's intention, kind of regardless, a desire for their children to come to Tri-Valley. Others have said, you know, we're not really telling people yet, we're moving to Fairbanks. So just kind of different factors come into play. And I know, and the hard part is recognizing that these conversations also influence that decision. And that's really hard. I know it can have a negative impact. Yet I know there's a responsibility to be planning the use of these public funds in a responsible way. And I don't know that planning a budget with a 12% shortfall of $1.2 million deficit is a responsible thing. And if that's what we do, it's like we will better go into it eyes wide open. Last kind of budget thing, go ahead. Tom.
Well, yeah, so as far as impacts on Cantwell and the parents of students who would be affected, are they dialed into this scenario possibility?
Probably less so than I'd like. In some ways I go, yes, given the number of staff. Parents that we have. I was trying to coordinate with the sites this week to set like a more specific, just kind of community-based meeting.
Yeah.
Not relying on the assembly meeting, not relying on
Right.
the board meetings, to try to sit down and have the conversations with them.
Yeah, I think that would be important.
I am meeting next Tuesday with the Tri-Valley Student Council.
Mhm.
That's to have a conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's important.
The other thing, and it's a budget and some conversation that Mayor Walker and I had on Monday, we kind of talked through scenarios. Gave some information on like the aspect of the impact on required local contribution, which tends to, on these projections, actually drop a little bit. Because overall, there's this ongoing drop in enrollment. So there's kind of like, you guys are doing. But actually, we were talking about, again, looking for what are some ways that the borough, if they have the financial ability and political will, are there other ways that the borough might be able to support the school district, which helps us with those operations in any of the scenarios? And a couple of things that we discussed. One was saying, well, what if the borough is able, through the major school maintenance fund, maybe additional contributions into the major school maintenance fund, to then do direct support for kind of small mid-level maintenance projects that we might otherwise do out of our operating budget. So the upgrade of the Siemens control panel is an example. You heard me say it's in this grant application. It also strangely is about the dollar figure of kind of like the difference that we're seeing in those levels this year. And if we were to consider like a consolidation budget, that again, based on the enrollment projections and at least the current ESA level, there'd be about $200,000 from kind of the previous level of local contribution to then what might be allowable. And so thinking was, if we're not operating school sites as schools, yet we have budgeted to maintain them in what I refer to as a cool state. Minimal utilities, maintenance personnel still present to maintain the systems, building integrity, provide, again, security. And things like keeping security systems active. Even have some monitoring of the school itself. That it might be possible in that case, since that's not operating at the school site, that there could be arrangement between the borough and the school, that the school takes care of this borough-owned building. And that contribution is a separate contribution and therefore separate from the monies received for school operations. That's when we kind of want to check and work through with the department to make sure that we're not running afoul of the laws and restrictions about local contribution. We feel like 100% on the one on like just the supporting maintenance projects. That is kind of the function of the borough and what you do, and have done even with other kind of mid-sized projects too.
Well, doesn't the school double as like a community center? So can't we provide funding, as a maintenance or support for the community center, right? People go there if there's an earthquake or some kind of big event. Can't we just say, hey, we're contributing to support the local community center, being the school?
Some questions me.
You're the money guy. You're more the money guy than I am.
Yeah.
But can't you get creative in that aspect and take over some of the expenses that would drop that deficit down to neutral? I mean, I think we ought to do whatever we can to cover that deficit. Because I know if you start closing schools, Anderson's going to go to Nenana. That's what I've been hearing. If they close Anderson, you're not getting those students. They're gonna go to Nenana. So you're losing, and you're still gonna have a deficit, and you're still maintaining the building. So maintaining the buildings, you're down 250, what I'm hearing. Whether they're open or closed. You still, that missing chunk is 250 grand. So if we do a one-time Siemens maintenance, purchase as partial use of the building as a community center or something, can't you get creative that way? Just label it different.
We want to see how it grows like that.
I actually was gonna point out that that's the first time I've ever seen him grab a pen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you never usually pull it out to write on anything.
I want to put that on the list of questions that I need to ask.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to do is enter into a scenario where the borough is making a contribution
Mhm.
that then simply might result in the state giving less.
Okay,
Or
Yeah.
threatens potential like federal education funding from the state. And those are the two aspects of the law that we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, to the degree that you're willing to do, doesn't jeopardize the intention of his act.
yeah. We give some and lose others. I get that. I don't understand why we're capped at that. What is it, 23%? There should be some leeway.
I can explain that if you have.
Yeah, would you?
There's a federal law that says in order to receive federal funding on a statewide level for education, school districts have to be funded about the same. And they define about the same as no more than 25% different from like the basic level of support.
Mhm.
So the state uses that 23% cap to keep them underneath the restrictions in that federal law. And the federal law has its own like kind of ways of counting it. So that's why they say we're not going to make it 25% because if we put it at 25%, we're going to go over the federal limit. So at 23%, it kind of gives them enough room that the little differences like almost always work out. Last year, it actually didn't work out. And there are 4 ways that they test that adherence, and they failed the first test.
Mm.
And the state actually did a lot of work to try to confirm the second way of testing, and they were successful. And the basic idea is the federal government says, point of education is to educate all the kids. We don't want the kids in just those rich communities to have a great education. We're for the ones in poor communities to have a horrible.
What about the ones in unpopulated communities? It's not our fault. We don't have kids in these buildings. Well, I mean, other than, but you know what I mean?
I do, and that's also have to realize, you say, if you look in place.
What time- how much time we
Look at
got?
the school in a wealthy community. It's a much finer facility with higher quality
Yeah.
services. You see in that poor community even with that better.
Yeah.
That must have been known.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I was gonna wrap up.
I just had a question, just how many people does the school district employ here in Cantwell and how many people are employed in Anderson?
Or in Cantwell. Probably 8 in Anderson. And that's the other thing, you talk about even the reductions in the stay open scenario, that impacts those staffing levels at the sites. It really pulls the staffing to a real minimal level. And all of a sudden, whether it's, you say it's a school district or the Campbell Clinic or the city of Anderson, whatever it is, whatever economic driver is impacted, that's an employment opportunity that's providing a grounding for a family, potentially parents in school.
So if there was a consolidation, how many of those jobs go away?
all of them go away with the exception of maintenance, which reduces. There's the,
And then those families who have kids are gonna move somewhere else, and then you lose more students, which lowers your number, so, yeah. Does gifting reduce potentially federal funding or?
you can give us. But the borough,
Okay.
you collectively have those limits.
About corporate gifting.
Corporate gifting, you can use that as a direct tax write-off. We have state law allows against for state tax, corporate taxes, deduction for public schools of up to $100,000.
I was just curious if there's, I don't know, like an example or something like, at a certain point, we're gonna get to a point where we're kind of damned if we do, damned if we don't on any of these decisions. Is there anything in your knowledge that kind of forecasts that, or? Like if it's happened, say, in another borough somewhere, the school got so small, and then all of a sudden it was just a matter of prolonging the inevitable, I guess, is kind of my question.
I do, and the pain of always having a
Right.
person who used to be the commissioner and was superintendent in Copper River and was a teacher in the school through a process, then ended up closing 3 of their 6 schools. And that was after a 7th one closed long before. Said the process was really painful and drawn out, and that length of time also makes it painful and hard and devastating to those communities.
It's a stressor right now.
Of all the times and situations where I'm aware of a school closing, and there are many closing recently. Both the time I've been superintendent, and time I was teacher and principal before in Alaska, I've only known of one school that closed that didn't reopen. Right. So in terms of locally, and remember at our school board meetings, one topic of conversation would be one of our conversation topics on our joint work session. Say on a state level, please advocate to legislators. Senator Shower to Representative McCabe, our senator and representative, please advocate to them. You know, what you would like in terms of the support to public education. And I mentioned them in particular. They have not traditionally been particularly strong supporters of increased funding to public schools. It will be a collective decision of all those legislators. So I'd say not just talk to those 2. They might listen to you a little bit more because you're a constituent. But there are 60 legislators up there and a governor. Communicating and advocating, it would be important to help maintain and establish the level of services that you want your communities. And that does include public education. And it is a hard decision that they wrestle with. If it was easy, the state would have resolved its fiscal problems and challenges a long time. It's not. So if you do advocate, always thank them, respect for their work, their service to the state of Alaska, and then advocate for what you think is right for the state, whatever that is. Whatever that is.
I'd say thanks for the report, but that's a really
Kind
tough
of a
one.
bummer.
No, thank you for reporting.
To me, I go, great, now I can actually work towards next rounds of planning. Like there are planning, like what happens to staff, what goes on. Now I have something more concrete to talk with people about. I appreciate the work of the finance committee to say, yeah, let's make a strong assumption, a risky assumption that will actually get an increase to funding. It helps us move forward in this planning. It helps us get through the panic period.
It does seem like it
at least a little bit of legislative hope that there's increased funding. Seems like a little bit of a groundswell.
Yes,
So,
Not positive.
to that point, so the bipartisan coalition in the Senate, they appear to support increased funding. State House isn't even organized yet, so who knows what they're gonna do. So do they have to pass some package that identifies a number, and then that's the negotiation point with the governor's office? So the governor won't do anything until the legislature puts something on his desk to potentially review, sign, or veto.
so kind of two aspects of the process. So we're generally advocating for an increase to the base student allocation as a core kind of funding level. That's a state statute. So that's a law that has to be passed by the House and the Senate. It usually goes through committees, then the body transmitted to the other body, possibly back conference committees, the whole, schoolhouse rock version of this bill comes along. And then it goes to the governor for signature or for veto. Not just changing the BSA, though, there also needs to be a budget that includes a line to pay the BSA at that level. That also goes through that same process. And again, it needs to be signed or vetoed. Alaska has a very strong line item veto authority on the budget. To override a gubernatorial veto on a budget, that requires a 75% affirmative vote in the House and the Senate. That's a very high bar to overcome. Traditionally, when I look at kind of Governor Dunleavy's actions through the legislative session, he very rarely makes public statements about legislation. So it's very difficult to kind of read or understand his kind of position on an aspect of things that may or may not become law. I do know he has kind of quieter conversations with legislators, but generally you won't see public statements in the media about it. Doesn't do kind of meetings and saying like, hey, this is the BSA we're going to get, regardless of the number. Don't get these statements.
Well, thank you for the report. Thank the board and your finance committee for the work that they're doing, and appreciate kind of the heads up and keeping these conversations out in the open, just for everybody involved and impacted in the communities, just to kind of be, as making these conversations as available as possible. So yeah, people can have their have their inputs and talk to us if need be. So thanks for that. Brings us to finance reports on our side. We've got a few.
So many.
Yeah.
Let's fall on the way to the packet.
Yeah.
Move to receive,
Mr. Shreve, move to receive,
oh, I second.
and a second to receive the financial reports through December.
Yeah.
Is that what I saw? Through November. Yeah.
I got December was in there.
Finance reports, July, August, September, October, and November. And you move to receive.
Yep.
If I might, just point out a couple things that I think are noteworthy on a higher level. And let's just go to November's because it's the most recent, right? And on page one, total checking and savings year over year is a dramatic difference. From 5.2 million to 12.2 million. We were in a position where we were concerned whether we could meet our obligation to the school district. We were in a position where we thought we would have to draw down some of our dedicated fund accounts. With the dramatic decline in our revenue from the tourism bucket, bottom falling out. And we had tremendous support from some friends and partners, and through the federal ARPA Act and through the state committing a good portion of their ARPA monies to the Denali Borough. You can see in this report that we made it. That we're whole. We're back at our prior strong financial position. And it's great to see. That combined, I should say, that combined with a return to in the visitor industry, frankly. And we'll look at that on the next page, but I definitely, I like those two numbers there. Also, maybe look up line item 1032. We got 6 million in a new check sweep account, new checking sweep account. That's an interest-bearing account, taking advantage of some of these higher rates, and we are earning some returns, some pretty favorable returns on those monies right now. Page 3, of course, that translates to our total assets on our balance sheet year over year. It goes from 34 million to 40 million. Strong position. Page 5, we move from the balance sheet to the budget versus actual. And here's where we see that strong return in the visitor industry and tax receipts. Boy, I was pleased to see this number. We in October is the month where we're taking in that first quarter, that those returns from July, August, and September, and it came in at 2.7 million, which is a healthy, strong number.
Still below the budget though.
Pardon?
Still below the budget though?
Correct.
Budget,
Our
full year.
forecast.
Yeah.
That's full year, right?
Mhm.
That's
Not
not
budget through November, is it? In the budget column.
The budget
Correct.
column, that's our total that we forecasted
Through
for the
November.
year ending June 30th.
Right.
No, through the
We
year.
Projected that we would take in 3.2 million in OA tax revenue.
Right, so we still have May and June to leapfrog.
Oh, we're gonna make
the budget.
it, yeah.
Exactly. So historically, as I said, this first quarter is our biggest quarter, but it's typically about 60%. That
Right.
fourth quarter's 40%. But here we're sitting at 85% of our, again, projection forecast.
Right.
So
So we're looking good.
we're looking good.
Actually,
We're likely to
Gonna come
exceed.
above budget.
Exactly. We're likely to exceed that forecasted amount, and we will be, coming on the amendment season, budget season. We'll start with the amendment and the new FY24 budget. And, that's one thing we'll likely be amending that one up, which is always nice. So, and yeah, I guess just a couple other little things, look at budget versus actual. You always want to look at where we are percentage wise, 85% on OA this time of year is favorable. There are a couple line items that we're over already on, and those are smaller line items, but insurance related. Insurance market is a very hard market right now, especially on property. And so those line items we're going to need to amend upward in the end. But overall, a strong balance sheet, and happy to see back in a strong financial position. Continue to thank legislators, congressional delegation, partners who've helped along the way, and continue that message in February meetings.
Doesn't look like people were smoking as much weed as we thought they would.
But they sure were drinking. They sure were drinking. There's still time. That's April. Come on, David. They ain't got no money. Oh. It wasn't me.
Broaden that tax base. Any discussion? To the finance reports? Anyone?
The highlight, yeah, thanks
it's
for
good.
making that.
Positive.
Okay. Anyone opposed to receiving the finance reports? Okay, they are received. And thanks to all the staff for the work getting all those together and done. Great. And that'll bring us
Pass that
to,
along.
yeah.
I'll pass that along. It is a lot of work and then work continues. Okay, so yeah, moving into my report. Thank you. And it's good to be with you all tonight. Good to have a full assembly, both in person and online. And wish everybody a happy new year. Hope everybody had enjoyable holiday season. And I really do appreciate Sergeant Minor, Mr. Cusack, and of course Superintendent Poulter for their reports. I do want to let you know that we're planning on having Superintendent Brooke Merrill, Denali National Park, provide a partner report at the February meeting, and she's going to speak to the Pretty Rocks progress and project. And moving into my written report, the street addressing project is continuing in its implementation phase. We are currently accepting requests for street addresses. It's for both residential addresses, for commercial business street addresses. Those applications can be found on our website. And, if you prefer to do it in paper, they're also available at the borough office that way as well. Staff is performing field work this week to put out two complete bid packages, one for the sign purchase and one for the installation of the signs for this project, and information regarding the number of signs. It's just more information that we need to be collecting so contractors can fairly bid on this project. Number of signs, specific locations, cross streets, heights of posts. They're out there measuring what height the posts are going to need to be. Existing signage that's there. That's all being gathered, consolidated. And as many of you know, the purchase and installation is paid for by the state Homeland Security grant and that rural business development grant. And that business development grant does include that borough match. We do not anticipate that the available funds for those two grant programs will purchase and install all the needed street signs. Remember, we have more streets here than we first thought. So we are going to be prioritizing. We have a prioritization list, prioritizing business development and emergency response. And we'll see how far down that list we can get with this project. That's going to hopefully be carried out this summer. Another sizable project that does take advantage of grant funding is the replacement of radios for all 4 borough via volunteer fire departments. An update to the statewide ALMR, that's the Alaska Land Mobile Radio System, and necessitated that upgrade. And through Homeland Security grant, through borough grant funding, and through department contributions, we're going to be able to swap out a majority of them, both the mobiles, the ones in the vehicles, and the handhelds, the portables. It's going to be about we actually purchased $131,000 worth of radios, and all the departments agreed to switch from Motorola to Kenwood, which were more affordable. So we're getting more bang for the buck for that $131,000. So that's all in progress. See, we are working with the State Public Assistance Office to recover some of those expenses incurred during the clear fire. We're hopeful at this point. It's going pretty well. We're hopeful that we're going to be reimbursed probably nearly $25,000. And and I'll bring forward a proposal come budget time to recapitalize, and backfill some of that disaster contingency fund that we utilized. Office renovation and expansion, we talked about the Tri-Valley Community Center and that old bank space. There's also a small addition in the upstairs, which is approved by ICHC, who currently rents that space. They're willing and happy to give it up. It's space that was actually used to be part of what is the borough office space when it was the meeting space back in the day. It was closed off to create a little more room for ICHC, or for the clinic as it was at that time, the Healy Clinic. So we're looking at potentially taking out that false wall and creating what would be a better meeting space, as we're meeting up there a lot with the planning commission, with the assembly, and to open that up a little bit would work well. And we're working with the owner of the building, the Tri-Valley Community Center, and the state fire marshal to approve design work for that renovation. That's where we are right now. It's going well, it's going forward. And yeah, to the financial statements and the audit, that work is continuing with our accounting consultant, with our treasurer. Currently, our auditor is testing our financial procedures, internal controls, and right now working on some of the grant stuff. Again, we are going to miss we have missed that December 31st deadline. There's no real penalty, but we're going to get it right, and we'll present those when they're ready. And I did note in here on my written report what I mentioned in the financial report piece about how that combination of federal support, state support, and strong returns are back to a strong financial position. I'll let you know about the Rural Health Development Planning Grant that you approved a resolution on at the last meeting. We did submit that federal grant application, which was a big grant application, and it was impressive. It's a great project. A strong network of health providers. The partners in the health network are the borough. We're not a provider, we're a partner in this network. The ICHC, Interior Community Health Center, Sedall Medical Services at Clear Space Force Station, Horizon Medical at Canning Clinic, Rail Belt Mental Health, and Tri-Valley Volunteer Fire Department. So we're hopeful on that grant application. And DOT updates. We did submit our final match contribution towards construction of the Healy Road reconstruction project, which we do anticipate, is scheduled for this summer. And DOT is helping us develop the scope, schedule, and estimate 3 different grant applications for some programs that are open right now, and putting a lot of work into getting some good applications in, working with DOT. One under the CTP program, the Community Transportation Program, is an application for reconstruction similar to the Healy Spur Road reconstruction for Otto Lake Road. And then under the TAP, the Transportation Alternatives Program, we're looking at an application for Healy sidewalks and paths, similar to what was submitted in 2019, but also a little different because that had more of the spur road. The spur road won't be there, but we're looking at the highway, Suntrana, School Road, Cole Street. So again, these are still in development. And then the other one is separated bike path, the same program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, separated bike path from Healy to the Antelope Ridge parking area. We'll let folks know that the Mayor's Community Service Award nominations are open. Those forms can be found on our website or at the borough office, and it closes January 20th. that's what I've got on my written report. I do have one additional item that I'd just like to update you on, and that was the big federal omnibus appropriations bill. There are some things in there, there are two significant things in there for the Denali Borough area. Senator Murkowski was integral to getting them in there under congressionally designated spending. One item is 2.5 million for a new health clinic in the borough. That would be ICHC. The money's going to ICHC, Jarrett Community Health Center, who has a good vacant lot on the highway in kind of the heart of Healy. And they have great plans to develop a really nice health center there. 2.5 million all. They're already committing $1 million of their own money to 3.5. Their plans and increased construction costs these days. They do estimate that's going to be 5.5. So they're going to continue to look for funding. But it's a great start towards a great improvement in our community, a new health center.
Is there a sort of a projected time frame on that, or
Yeah, they're hopeful for 2025
that be completed?
that they could have everything in place ready to.
Well,
Yep.
Would that be in like an extension of services or the same services that we've had before, or?
They are talking about it. I mean, their model is the model of provision of primary care. But they are interested in expanding dental services. There's not an X-ray in this plan that
mhm.
Which is,
but yeah, they're
Okay.
committed to the area and talk about serve the area.
Do they have a location?
Yeah, they've owned a parcel on the west side of the Parks Highway, north side of Ranch Road, just north of Holland America Princess's homestead.
Right in front of us.
Most people see it as just a big gravel parking lot in front of Alaska East. That's actually a fair sized lot.
Yes, it
It's its own separately owned. It's been owned by HCHC for a while. Lot. And their plans do include a little beautification as well.
oh, good.
That's good. We could always use some.
Yeah, there's a little landscaping. The nice architectural drawings. So that's one of the two things in the omnibus appropriations bill. The other, and boy, we did some digging to find it. And we heard it was in there. It's 2.18 million, which is not a number that was requested or really matches any project out there. But it's 2.18 million for pedestrian pathways along the Parks Highway with the federal nexus to Denali National Park. So we are in discussions with Alaska Trails, was the named grantee, as this was kind of Alaska Long Trail funding. And we're talking with Alaska Trails, we're talking with DOT, for we do see Alaska Trails as kind of pass-through organization. Funding will go to DOT to plan and hopefully carry out a pedestrian pathway along the Parks Highway with the. So we're excited about some good wins and the big appropriations. And, Teresa did want me to share with you that the health fair she's working with partners in scheduling and putting together is now has a firm date of April 28th. April, and more information on what's kind of services will be available at that health fair will be coming later, but it'll be April 28th.
At Tri Valley.
location too. I'm sure she has it, but right.
Okay,
I think it is a Tri-Valley Community Center. I think so.
that's cool.
And so in the community center, they would move that operation into the new health center.
They went there.
Yeah.
And they're excited about a more purpose-built space to meet their.
It's all great. Totally good.
Union Clinic, is that impacted by this, or would that remain in place operational?
I don't see that they would not be operational. They really do meet two different
Right.
needs from, they're not a primary care provider, really. They're more urgent care. So I don't see it necessarily negatively impacting the operation.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Mayor Walker. Any questions for the mayor? Yeah.
I don't know, planning commission, have they received any, can they tell volume of the surveys they sent out about the lignite division? Have they gotten anything?
Question.
You didn't write it down for a reason, but
Community Development Director Teresa Floberg is receiving and among other things right now, compiling that information is, that survey is closed now. And she's hoping to have a good distillation of the results of that survey for the Planning Commission meeting next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. That's on the agenda for the Planning Commission. And I'm interested in seeing it, and we'll share it with the assembly as well. And also the community health needs assessment survey. We got a lot of responses on that one as well. And Dina, who's putting together the health assessment, I've seen a draft preliminary that looks really good. It's a lot of information and recommendations, and we'll be sharing that with the assembly when it's complete.
Maybe if enough people put x-rays on there.
Breaking some more bones.
you break a lot of bones. Let me tell you, I would have happily gotten an x-ray in Healy rather than Fairbanks.
I was up there on Monday getting an X-ray.
What'd you do? Oh, man.
Old man stuff.
Old man stuff.
We'll move on to assembly comments and let's go around the circle this time. Start with Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much for all the reports and all the hard work. I mean, there's obviously a lot of hard work in all these pages right here, and it's nice that there's some good news in there too. And that's all excellent, and a lot of hard work being done in the schools. And I think that everybody here is pretty solid in our support of schools and knows the importance of a solid school for attracting families and growing this borough. So I think we have your back as much as we can. That's it.
I just ditto. I appreciate the reports and the time. There's a lot of work that we don't see, so it's really appreciated. And it is really exciting. And thanks for all of the grant writing and all of the work that went into getting our budget, getting us through the last 2 years, and looking out for the community. That's really awesome. And to the school board and the finance committee and all that they're doing. It is hard, and it will impact the community a lot. Hopefully we can keep them going and keep our community going strong.
Yeah, I agree. The work that went into the finance, first off, Vanessa does a great job. And she really puts a lot into this community. Wanted to thank her for that. And Superintendent Bolta, once again, I mean, trying to get everything working right. And I know it's a tough job, hard decision to be made, but I support keeping those schools open. I mean, just driving down here tonight, there's some really slick areas on that road. And trucking kids 45 minutes to an hour, you know, we're driving at 65 or 55 getting here, but a bus is going to go slower because they're making stops. You're adding a significant amount of time to those students' days and the extra danger you're putting them in. But by closing schools, you're killing the communities too. You know, it really affects them, I believe. But whatever we can do, you know, get creative without getting in trouble. You know, I'm in support of. But yeah, thanks to the staff and all the work that went into the financial report. I mean, that's a lot of work. And once again, great job. And that's it. Thanks.
Before I forget, I'll go to Mr. Chatfield. If you got any comments.
Not too many. I just want to echo the same things that everyone else has already said. And we definitely appreciate all the hard work everyone has put into all the reports and other things besides just reports too. There's a lot of things that we don't see, the public doesn't see, but if you ever go up and check things out in the borough office, there's a lot going on there, and the same way with the school district. And I just appreciate all the hard work. We have a lot of I see on the horizon we're probably going to have a lot of tough decisions to make, and there's going to be a lot of work in this next year. So buckle up. That's all I have to say.
And Mr. Hammond.
Oh, it came to me. Yeah, absolutely. The financial reports, I was actually impressed when I saw how thick it was and all the work that went into it. So quite a bit of detail there. I know I've been supportive behind the curtains with the schools a lot. I didn't want to seem impartial, but it's definitely part of the community, whether it's Cantwell or Tri-Valley or Anderson. And I'm really glad to see everybody pulling together and recognizing that. So hopefully we can keep it going and figure out a way to get this funded and taken care of. I'm sure there's a resolution. There's something out there that will take care of us, but I'm just really happy to see the community and the board kind of on the same page. So that's my part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would just say, kind of sitting here in this building, having the meeting down here, and just what the school means to the place down here in Cantwell's hard to kind of contemplate that, but it's a building that we own, as a borough. And as the school district goes through this process of like, do we close it or don't we, like that? Just like that, those different contingencies, or going through those different exercises is like, well, what does that mean for us in our building here? And obviously the difference between the short term and the long term is huge there. But I would hate, anyway, my mind immediately goes to, like, well, what can we do? Like, what are the opportunities that we have? And there's a lot of really great thinkers here, innovators and entrepreneurial spirit and all kinds of things to kind of make it work. So I'm certainly, if we end up with this building here, it's like, what are we going to do with it? And, are there, things that could potentially generate revenue, serve a public purpose, still be educational? Like, is there something we can do here that would still, help anchor the community, bring people in, whatever it is. And if we can think of what that is, and can it coexist with, some school operations, so we can keep kids off of the road. Like, if we come up with a great idea to use this building for, if it's not a school anymore, it's like, well, how do we leverage that to make it work together? And that's just, I don't know, trying to open to anything. And I think the people that are down here and see the space and know what it means, it's like, we got to hear, you know, what opportunities are there to help. Yeah, give it purpose. Ms. Bone.
Yeah, I definitely don't envy the conversations that you're having, Mr. Polta. It is an impactful one, and I mean, the bottom line of it is if we're having a hard time keeping people in Cantwell, then if we close the school, you're going to have an even harder time attracting people to Cantwell. And it's gonna kind of perpetuate its own problem to a certain degree. And so, like everybody here said, and like I assume our remaining assembly members will say, you know, let's hit the hammer on this one. Let's figure out what we can do, what it takes, if it's legally viable, like what we were talking about earlier. You know, because in order to make this a non-issue, we have to collect, you know, 20 or 30 kids and get them into this building. And without having a very big economic market here in Cantwell, there's not a lot of, you know, appealing job opportunities, which is gonna bring families and et cetera, et cetera. So whatever that takes. Financially speaking, looking at the reports coming into the meeting tonight, it was very great, like relieving to see that $12 million back in our bank account, but also it was nice to have that many in a row where you could kind of see the trend. You know, it's no small feat that we recovered and persevered the way that we did, so we should be proud of that as well. Yeah, lots of stuff going on, so stay tuned.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that's watching for being here and for the reports that were given. The like has been said, the tough decisions coming up, especially on the board. But any way that we can help would be great, to be able to try to keep them open as long as we can, find ways, maybe thinking outside the box of, like Krista was saying, of ways to create more economic drives, to have more jobs here, to then bring more people in. It's kind of working that way, and looking at how to increase the job opportunities, that way families will want to come, and different things like that, because there's a lot of opportunities I think that could happen. It's just getting them to happen would really help out the communities, and keeping not only this school public library, but also evacuation point and everything else that it does for the communities. And keeping a borough building running it's not an easy feat, especially in the weather that we have. But yeah, if we have them, might as well use them. It is a hard decision coming up for the school side, but also looking at everything else, like our budget, and that's looking really good. And then the projects that we have coming down the line, it's good to hear some of those bills that we didn't realize might be there that are coming in to help better the services in the Denali Borough. Even though some of them are more located towards Healy, the people still passing through both ends to get to Healy, and so there'll be people stopping for gas, people stopping for food. So the more people we can get to visit the area, the more they come into our communities, and the more that we can really start seeing a better potential for different things. So it's really good to see some of these bills and see the grants, getting better equipment for the emergency services, that we can communicate better, getting the signs going, just a lot of good stuff happening. So it's it's always fun to see the progress that we have going on. Thanks.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you to those who made the trip south. Hopefully the roads weren't too bad. It is a mild winter evening here in Cantwell. I think a year ago it was like 20-30 below and 60-mile an hour winds cranking through the valley and taking down trees here. So this is a far cry from the weather we had a year ago. So thanks for attending. And to those who are participating via Zoom. And again, thanks for all the great reports, Superintendent Polta, Mayor Walker, Ms. Jusak, Sergeant Minor. Appreciate the updates and again, all the hard work that goes into generating the reports. And really appreciate the support and the recognition of the situation here with the Cantwell School. I think it means a lot for this body to recognize that and to be engaged with potential solutions. So I certainly want to work with the assembly to do what can be done to support the school board, but also to address a broader issue, which is economic development here in the southern part of the borough. Because it's not just the school. EMS services are probably funded and viable through the end of this fiscal year. I spoke with Marge Nord just the other day, and she's pretty clear that, you know, this is her last run at it, and there's no younger population really willing to step into those EMT roles or to drive the ambulance. And the driver of that is lack of jobs. So it's not just schools, but it's now going to bleed into EMS services. And then at that point, you know, who knows what will take place. So anyway, those are items certainly I want to address, and appreciate everybody's support and trying to get some resolution on it. So thanks.
Don't have any ordinances on the agenda tonight. So that'll bring us to resolutions. And the first one is resolution 23-01, a resolution of the Denali Borough Assembly supporting the state of Alaska participating as a full partner in its public school systems major maintenance projects.
Move to approve resolution 2301.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shreve to approve and seconded. Mayor Walker.
Thank you. It would be a good thing for the state of Alaska to participate as a full partner in its public school system major projects. We support that, and we haven't seen that consistently over the past number of years. And yeah, the resolution goes into some of the actuals of how few projects have been funded in the state and what the needs are out there. The needs are significant, especially here in the Denali Borough, where we do have older schools. We're here in a school that, you know, has a lot of years on it, and we need that partner. So we're ready to do our part in the major maintenance program that's on the books with our local responsibility, and we need the state to provide the funding, frankly, to that program, and work through more projects off that list. So I appreciate your consideration of this. Look forward to bringing it forward to the legislators in February.
Any discussion?
I have a question, and this is just me kind of being me, but where is the stick from, like, as a state's perspective, right? We've got some documented proof that they're not really being an equal partner. Is there any, you know, punishment or whatever, like, thank you, recourse, accountability, whatever the word is that I'm digging for. Thank you, guys. If they're going to continually not do that, is there anything that we can do to, I don't know, put more bite on it? Or does that make sense? Kind of what I'm asking you. I'm sorry.
Do we have?
Like, is there any, because they're getting money from the federal government to provide this partnership, is that right, or is that not?
No, these are not
Okay.
federal funds.
That's just state funding. So they're just in charge and there's no accountability for them not doing it?
you know, organization, an entity, maybe even, maybe an educational advocacy group, or potentially
Like the people versus the state of Alaska kind of thing?
make the case that they're not meeting their constitutional responsibility is the only real stake.
Okay,
that I see.
right.
Are they consistently applying the same lack of support to all school districts throughout the state? To the best of your
In
knowledge.
some ways, it's interesting, not all municipal school districts have consistently utilized this program, major school maintenance program. Many of the larger districts have regularly used the school bond debt reimbursement program, in which they go ahead and do the project with that expectation that they'll be reimbursed, and then that program A wasn't reimbursed and B was suspended. So with that program being suspended, more of the larger and deeper pocketed school districts jumped into this program as well, because the other program was suspended. So yes and no, and there are some districts that do major school maintenance projects on their own, and don't ask for that state participation. But the list is broad, it's long in terms of the different districts who participate in this, and it does represent from the largest to the smallest districts. And the projects are often, pretty vital projects. They are things like roofs and heating systems and essential components to the facilities. And I was going to see if I had the number on here, how much need there is out there. It's not on this particular resolution, but it's a long list that is varied in terms of who participates and how much need is out there. Superintendent Bolton.
We could have a few things. One, a recourse thing, and just say, it's elections.
Okay,
Just where we're at because of our collective decision. This has been the collective decision of the state. That's what democracy is.
okay.
That's one aspect of recourse. Some details on the programs. The kind of aggregate amount of requests on the major school maintenance list are over $100 million. School districts do not submit all of the projects because it takes time and money to submit applications. So we have projects that we'd like to do at some point that we know need to be done that aren't submitted because we're not going to spend the money. There are a couple districts that say we're not even going to apply because it's not worth the time and money because you're never going to give us. That list, though, I'd say is equally supported or not supported across the state, and that list is ranked by the department in terms of what's the highest priority. It goes through a scoring mechanism and it is ranked. So when we get scored high, that means that the application and the need has been determined more significant than another district. So it's like an urgency aspect, but the funding still has to be there to pay for it. The bond program, which recently had been completely suspended on debt reimbursement, state municipality would bond for the project and the state would reimburse its share. That was suspended for 5 years. That program actually doesn't have any ranking, which is a weird thing, which I would say is a way that the state initially seemed to be supporting districts that did bonding more than others. Yet when we see the stopping of the reimbursement, that really hit those districts. How significant. You might have seen articles about that. It impacted Fairbanks. When that program was suspended, the Denali Borough was not impacted. Because you didn't take that risk.
Other discussion? Okay, if not, a roll call vote on approval of resolution 23-01.
Richard Hammond,
I think he heard you.
Richard Hammond,
Yes.
Jeff Stanger,
Yes.
David Alexander,
Yes.
Alan Tree,
Yes.
Dominic Canali,
Yes.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Joe Chapel,
Yes.
Chris Sapone,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman.
Yes. Okay. Resolution is approved, and that'll bring us to resolution 23-02. A resolution of the Denali Borough Assembly identifying Denali Borough legislative priorities for the first regular session of the 33rd Legislature of the State of Alaska, beginning January 17th, 2023.
Move to approve resolution 23-02.
Okay, moved by Mr. Shreve, approve, and seconded. Mayor Walker?
Thank you. Yeah, legislative session is coming right up. And this resolution, speaking to our priorities for the session, let me just say, and carry forward to the next one too, which is our capital request. Doesn't necessarily have to be the last word, the final word on our decisions. We do have a February meeting that is on the 8th, February 8th, which is certainly in advance of our fly-in of our AML conference when we'll be visiting Juneau and advocating and bringing these resolutions forward. So this resolution speaks to some long-standing priorities, including community assistance. How important it is to Alaska's municipalities, including the Denali Borough and the city of Anderson. It's important, as a percentage, it's more important to the city of Anderson than it is the Denali Borough. I've advocated for those smaller second-class cities for this program for a lot of years. It's also very helpful for the boroughs. And of course, maintaining the state's commitment for the unfunded liability of the first program, maintaining their agreement, that 2008 agreement of capping the employer contributions at 22%. There doesn't seem to be a real threat there this year, but it comes and goes, the threat of raising that. So let's keep that as a priority. And we have stated waysides and their maintenance and having year-round waysides would be real safety and cleanliness enhancement. And I think a big part of any kind of winter visitation plan. At the same time, it's a challenge. There's not an easy solution. But we stated it last year, and I'd say let's keep it there as a priority. That type of essential service, the traveling public. And yeah, we do speak to major school maintenance here, capital projects. And so on the back page, we've got those priorities stated for this year. You might, some of the discussion we just had about the BSA and any support the Denali Borough Assembly wants to put behind that. It's not in this document, but we could, and especially we are having a joint work session, we're considering having a joint work session with the school board. We could potentially bring forward a resolution in support of an increase in the BSA at the February meeting.
Yeah, good.
I move to do that.
We need,
Yeah. But first, let's deal with this one.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call vote on approval of resolution 2302.
David Alexander,
Yes.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Richard Hammond,
Yes.
Chris Zafon,
Yeah,
Dominic Denali,
Yes.
Talon Tree,
Yes.
Jeff Stanger,
Yes.
Joe Chapel,
Yes.
Jared Zimmerman.
Yes. That resolution is approved and brings us to resolution 23-03, a resolution by the Denali Borough Assembly identifying a state of Alaska capital budget request for fiscal year 2024 and committing to the provision of matching funds.
Move to approve resolution 2303.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Shreve to approve and seconded. Mayor Walker.
Thank you. Our capital budget request for the coming fiscal year FY 24 and committing to the provision of matching funds. So we speak to our coordination with the school district, identified a project to improve the safety, health, and resiliency of our community. The backup power generator that we know needs replacement, very aged, can't get parts for it, needs replacement. So the school that serves the majority of the students in the borough, it's over 40 years old. Additionally, Tri-Valley School Services, the disaster shelter location. And this long identified need has not been met through the major school maintenance grant program. Whereas this project remains years out based upon lack of funding and progress. The Denali Borough Assembly commits to the provision of half of the total project cost, which is, we'll say roughly, roughly $250,000. In the event that the grant request is successful, so we're asking for $123,750 for that. Now the next one is the Denali Borough landfill through compliant and efficient operations, provide sanitation waste services for the entire borough and the city of Nenana. Our primary facility is enclosed. Our primary facility need there at the landfill is an enclosed, handle, manage household hazardous wastes, electronics, and other wastes which are segregated from the waste stream and will help prolong the lifespan of the landfill. So we're asking for $50,000, which is a sum that doesn't require a lot of additional reporting. It's a little easier for the legislature to grant for that building. And then finally, those are to us, to the Denali Borough, grants to municipalities, that section of the budget. And the final thing we've got here, final request is would go to DOT. DOT Northern Region funding, and that is to fund the recommended wind study for the preferred location of a potential future Denali airport. So that's $125,000. So that's what we've got in our capital budget request. Excited to go talk about the Denali Regional Airport down there as well and its benefits to the state.
Question, if you don't mind. So I think I remember in the brochure, the report that what they had given out, there were like 3 potential locations here. We've sort of decided that this one, which is the one that would be close to Healy, not the one that's way the hell out there, would be the better.
Yeah, the other, they're basically identified. Here's the airport.
Yeah, they're like almost all the way to Fairbanks.
And that is a potential problem with that location, with a radius that's pretty close to the clear airport and the Nenana airport, and whether it would be eligible for federal funding as doesn't look like it to us who are working on this.
Right.
On this. So
the milepost 256 is, I think, was B. Or the it was the second on that.
Correct, and it's the spot we've identified in our plan as well for development of the region.
The railroad and.
It is, it's on the same side of the highways, or same side of the river as the railroad, yeah,
Which would be a nice thing.
right, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood that.
Since you brought it up. No, it's fine. I just, so from our last meeting, it was, what I walked away understanding was that the state is looking for statewide funding to do this wind study, right? So are we kind of supporting them? And then I guess the language here I get kind of hung up on because it says at a preferred location, and then we actually nailed that location later in the document. I feel like those things should match, whatever that looks like, whether we want to do that. Thinking about it again today, mile 256 is like 2.5 miles shy of the wind farm. And so that location might also pose some issues for FAA and the flight patterns around wind turbines. There's some federal regulations around that. So just for everybody's awareness. And then I've gotten a lot of folks coming to me concerned that that would be too close. Now I understand there's a limited number of places that it is feasible, but these folks are very concerned about 747s flying over their houses. So I know that the other option further north towards Anderson also has its own issues. It kind of feels like at the last meeting, we were like, okay, well, the state has to figure out where to find the money, right? And we've just had a whole meeting about how they don't have any. And now we're kind of like, also, we want a new airport. Like, so I'm not trying to, I'm not against the airport. I'm just trying to kind of give everybody what I've been catching on the topic. And I know it would be really nice, but is there, I don't know. I guess a preferred location or milepost 256, in my opinion, those should be the same in the whereases and the monetized statement at the end of the document. But I also am concerned that some of our folks are going to feel like we're ahead of them and not necessarily, because we haven't had any like formal, where would you guys want the airport to be at? And I mean, like, you can interrupt me. Otherwise I'll go. But but so it feels like from our last meeting, we're like, okay, we're waiting for the state, to this meeting, we've decided 256. We're gonna kind of start a little fire over it, if you understand, like a social fire is what I like to call them. Go ahead.
I would say that we have talked about that one for many years now, because it was the plan that Steve Jones put out a long time ago, was that spot. And
Okay.
that was what we did in our economic development studies in the 4 meetings that we had.
Sure.
That was in there as well.
I'm asking, I'm not trying
Yeah,
to be
that, yeah, no,
the no.
that was the one that has been in the plan since.
Yeah, but how much public engagement has there actually been?
Well,
Maybe a bit more tangible than it was when those planning documents were put together, right? So now people are kind of waking up to the idea that, hey, this is possibly real, and how's it going to impact me, right? So we don't have, or haven't had any public hearings, or there's been no public process to this point, and maybe that's premature. The fund to win study doesn't commit any activity to actually engage, even if the funding were there. It's just looking at, but it is, like, to your point, it will generate buzz, and if we're not in front of it, then there could be some backlash.
Well, like I said, there's been more than one person come up to me like, are they really putting an airport over my house? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa, calm down. The state still has to provide, because it is. I mean, an airport's not just going to plop overnight. Like, it's 2 or 3 years worth of wind study, then you got to develop and land and everything else. But I just feel like maybe we take near milepost 256 off, and we know that the preferred location is such, but it's not recorded. I don't know. I don't want people to get so bent out of shape of where they think it's gonna be that they shut it
It
down.
does appear like we're locking in and supporting that location.
Kind of, without actually due process.
Right,
But really,
without,
the best location.
But also, like you said, we've talked about it. It was in the meeting with the brochure, the answer could very well be, well, if you guys, paid attention to the borough meetings, you would have known. And like, that's not a popular answer, but it is the truth.
Since 2015,
Mhm.
that's.
Mayor Walker.
Thank you, and thanks for that, Ms.
Sorry.
We have, and thanks for that. Now, we have talked about this location a lot over the years, and put it in a plan and had different resolutions and support over the years. But at the same time, all this time, we don't know.
right,
It's a good location for an airport.
Correct.
You don't know. And this is, I kind of call it a feasibility study, but a study. Is this a good spot for an airport? Is what this money would help determine. And whether you support it or not, I think it's worthwhile to find out whether it's a good spot for an airport.
I mean, if they say no, then
Then that's that. Again, I'm not trying to say no, I'm just trying to.
get one down towards Cantwell, bring in a bunch of jobs,
Luggage handlers, airport securities.
hotels, restaurants.
I guess I just have a clarifying question. Kind of where are we at and just kind of in terms of like roles here or who's driving the airport ship? Is it does DOT kind of have final say on where the airport goes? I mean, or they have recommended that a wind study be conducted. Have they recommended who conducts the wind study and who, is that us that's gonna conduct it, or DOT themselves would conduct a wind study and they do that kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. It will be DOT who conducts this wind study. And we're calling it a partnership, but that it's just working together really. Between the Denali Borough, between DOT and Doyon Incorporated is interested in this project as well. And we do meet and talk about some of the challenges, and there are a lot of challenges. And we meet about once a month. And we think that this is a good next step to pursue funding for the wind study and determine the feasibility of that potential site.
How long would the study take?
It's a multi-year study.
It'll be at least 2 to 3 years for a wind study
I
like
can save
that.
them some time. It's really windy.
It is, that's why it's the wind farm there. Ironically enough, that's why the wind farm is there. So even if they want to perform a new wind study, they actually have wind study from the wind farm.
Hasn't the study already been done? Because that's where they put the turbines.
But it's not exactly, like,
Yeah,
Open it's in the right
yeah.
direction is what they have to look at.
I mean, they'll have frame of reference, but it's not the exact location. So. But yeah, I mean, it is very windy there.
It's easy to take off. Wait, land on one
Anyway,
day.
I just wanted to field that for everybody, so that I could,
Just look at it goes fast.
it's not how planes work.
7:37.
737.
Like a regional.
Yeah, you wouldn't see a 47.
Yeah.
See them
Development tourism.
Mhm.
hoppers.
Seattle Direct is what I heard.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I didn't really hear that. But,
Maybe once a week.
Anyway,
Maybe nice.
thank you for answering my question, Mayor.
mhm.
Take the sting out of all that noise in your house.
Right?
Only
Just
be a
for the
couple.
ambiance of nature.
It's quiet inside the plane.
The other, sorry, I'm actually not done.
Oh,
But the other concern that I've heard is, so we get the airport, flash forward 6 years or whatever. Do we have the employees, the first response, the troopers, like, where does that come from? Like the capacity for us as a borough to provide room for more of the same when we're kind of teetering on barely making it for the capacity we do get in the summers now. Is just the other information.
I think it would provide incentives for those wanting to move into the area because there could be good paying jobs, right, where they can raise, support a family.
But those paying jobs right now, the ones that I'm thinking particularly like first response, fire, those are volunteer positions, so
This should open up some grant opportunities with.
some more grant
Yeah,
opportunities
federal,
for that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
This would be more of a year-round thing, right? Not necessarily.
It would help the year-round tourism for sure, but yeah, I'm just, like I said, I'm just throwing it out for everybody.
DSA.
Hey, if you're a flight attendant, you get to fly on standby,
Based
well, for taxes, but I mean, hey, incentives. It includes the baggage handlers.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was it. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I don't know, I could think of
Yeah.
something.
I'll keep
I
asking.
just
just
want
in
to keep
case.
it, I just want to keep us here in Cantwell, as long as I can.
Hearing none,
I'm done. I'm
mostly none. Roll call vote, please, on resolution 23-03.
I don't think you're.
Richard Hammond,
Yeah.
Lisa Minor,
Yes.
Alan Shreve,
Yes.
Joe Chatfield,
Yes.
Dominic Canali,
Yes.
Jeff Singer,
Yes.
David Alexander,
Yes.
Krista Zapone,
Yes,
Jared Zimmerman,
Yes,
that's unanimous.
all right, resolution is approved. Brings us to other business. And we have the appointment of planning commissioners on the agenda, and there is a a slate of candidates here in our packet. Mayor Walker. These would be your appointments that we would confirm, is that right? Yeah.
Mayor appoints, the assembly confirms. So appreciate the consideration of the full slate of our full planning commission. We do have 7 active, engaged, participating members. Thankful for their service. And I would ask for your favorable confirmation of all 7 for an interim period of basically 1 year while we implement what was passed by the voters, and that is the assembly sets the composition of the planning commission. So that'll come at a later time, but for now, let's keep a good thing going. And we'll of course keep a good thing going later too, but now let's take care of business by appointing 7 commissioners.
Confirm, approve.
move to confirm.
I move to confirm the planning commissioners. For 2023.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Shreve has moved to confirm the full slate of commissioners the mayor has appointed. And it's been seconded. Any discussion on confirming these appointments? Anyone opposed to confirming? Hearing none, we'll call that unanimous. Thank you to our planning commissioners willing to serve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That'll bring us to appointment of the finance committee members. I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Canali and Mr. Shreve before the meeting. They've been serving on the finance committee, but I did also want to query other members if anyone else is interested on either continuing to serve or to serve.
Yeah, unfortunately, my schedule being as it is this year, I actually need to resign from the finance committee and its effective chair of. So it's not something I do lightly, but I had to make a decision and my schedule is Monday through Thursday. So I cannot. I would love to, and I will miss it, but I have been the chair for almost 5 years now. And so it's okay to have somebody else step up and take over that and get the exposure. I now have the knowledge. So when I get the reports, I know what I'm looking at and I know what to ask. So, yeah, unfortunately, I do have to resign from the finance committee in whole.
What is the schedule? Is it once a
Meet
month?
quarterly?
Quarterly?
Quarterly.
Unless there's other projects that come up that we need to look at.
And it is
There's-
good if you're not, comfortable or confident in interpreting our finances. It is a good semi-informal, conversation, basically, to
And how many people do we normally have on the finance committee?
Three.
Three?
Three, yeah.
Now we're minus one.
Yeah, so I'd be looking for one new member, potentially two.
try.
Volunteer.
Okay,
Oh, good.
and you're interested as well, Mr.
Yeah.
Hammond?
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good.
And I think having 4 members is fine. We still have a 9-member assembly, so having 4 members on a commission or a committee is good. Right? But once we go, this is just for my knowledge, I'd like to appoint the 4 interested people. But just a question, when we move to a 7-member assembly, would we, to have a committee like that, should it just be 3 assembly members at a time? Is there any issues with having a majority of an assembly on a committee like that?
You could have 3 with an alternate. There.
Okay.
And actually, we do run into that often where one person can't be there, so it's like last year, I remember most of our meetings had 2. Just-
Yeah.
Have a 3 with an alternate. would be fine.
Okay.
But there could only be 3 votes at the meeting, so if all 4 showed up, the alternate would be part, he or she would be part of the discussion, but not.
But for.
4 for now is good.
For what?
Over now, it's fine.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, I'd like to appoint Mr. Alexander, Mr. Hammond, Mr. Canali, and Mr. Shreve to serve on the finance committee. Thanks for willing us to do that.
Second.
Oh. No, that's
He
just,
just gets to do it.
that's just pointing.
Good.
Mr. Presiding Officer, sir?
Yep.
I would like to nominate Town Shreve for chair of said committee.
I think, or do they,
Or do they do that?
I think they'll do that in the first meeting
Do it
here.
yourself.
Let the politicking commence. All right. Brings us back,
Next meeting of the finance.
ooh,
Oh, it's on the list, I think.
no, February 28th.
Right.
And are those done same way? Are we zooming?
Normal.
And let's see, any public comments? Okay. There's no public comments. We'll move on to assembly comments. And we'll start with Mr. Canali this time.
Thanks again, everybody. Great meeting. Really enjoyed the discussion, and no, there's a lot more in-depth discussion that will be had, especially as we're under budget season, and address some of the issues brought forward tonight. So look forward to that. Otherwise, thanks again, and everybody driving, do drive safe.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Good discussion. It's always good to have, to hear what our constituents are talking about with different projects coming up and being able to hopefully explain it a little bit more and get more community involvement with it. That way we can make better educated decisions on what the people are looking for instead of just us always trying to make decisions, get everybody's input. And then I also look forward to the AML conference coming up. If we fly in down to Juneau, it's going to be a good one, and be able to take down our priorities and what we're trying to do, and that we want to work with the state, not just go out there and take from the state, but what we do is we're giving back. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with me again. I do, like I said, I like to bring what I hear, and well, not unfortunately, but now I'm in a place where people know where I am for 10 to 11 hours every day. And sometimes I get some knee-jerk opinions, and if they are just that, they are valid. And so I just want to make sure that I can do my part to make everybody apprised of those things as they happen. It's a great meeting. You know, my thoughts are with Cantwell. I'm gonna keep chewing on that one. And the school board and the finance committee there. It is not an unthanked, but it's a very underrated service that the school board and the associated folks there provide for us. And so my many thanks to them. Thank you guys for being here, and Happy New Year.
Mr. Hammond?
Yeah, it's been great with all you folks, and I'm glad to hear that everybody's well and everybody had great holidays and Happy New Year. But it's been interesting. I'm still learning with every one of these meetings how y'all work, but I'm really, really impressed so far with everything everybody's been doing. I just wanted to do a shout out to you guys. So that's all I got, guys.
And Mr. Chatfield?
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say at this point, but I just want to say thanks for everybody being here at the meeting, and anybody that's watching or listening. And Happy New Year. And that's all I have. Thanks. Have a good night.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for a great meeting. Yeah, leave it at that. Mr. Stenger?
Yeah, really good meeting. I enjoyed it. I mean, there's a lot we need to get done for sure, and I hope we get some kind of resolution to the school budget. That's my #1 priority. Encourage everybody to call our delegates on this BSA and tell them how much we need that help and bump up, and let them know what it means to this community in this borough. I think that's really important, but really good meeting. Enjoy working with you guys. It's cool.
Ms. Minor?
Thanks for those that participated, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Good meeting. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
It's hard to go last. It's always hard to go last.
All right, time and place of the next meetings. We do have a joint work session with the school board. I think on the calendar. I think everybody should plan on making that if at all possible. That is January 24th. That's a Tuesday evening at 6 p.m.
And where?
And that'll be in Healy.
Healy.
So I've been curious of the location as well.
It'll probably be in the Windjammer. No.
It'll be,
Bring your
Oh,
chair.
Okay.
They've knocked the wall down already? Oh.
That
Just
could be.
That's what we'll do.
team building.
Yeah, teamwork set.
Knock it down.
Bring your hammer. Okay, and then it'll be our regular meeting on February 8th at the Denali Borough office. And then the recommended date for the finance committee meeting would be February 28th at 6 p.m. But I'll leave that up to the finance committee to get together, and if you all want to change the date, just go ahead and work with the clerk to get that posted. And recommended that we set the grant review meeting. There's a recommendation for Tuesday, March 21st at 6 p.m. Anybody want to weigh in on a March 21st meeting date? March 1st.
March 1st.
So give a few weeks for staff to compile and verify everything and get the package together for us.
If I can just make an observation, we do see quite a few Tuesdays on here.
Yep.
Mayor Walker was scheduled to have another Wednesday night class semester, so we're gonna congratulate him or something.
Well, actually, I'll wait till you finish.
But now that he's started the class, it really isn't kind of set in stone, so if you want to adjust any of these.
Tuesdays is the day.
Tuesday, Wednesday, it's the same to me.
Keep our regular meetings, assembly meetings on the Wednesdays, but yeah. Well, unless there's conflicts, let's plan on Tuesday, the 21st, and we can enjoy Mayor Walker's attendance then. If we don't want him there, we should switch it to Wednesday.
There we go.
You're good.
I would switch it to a Wednesday.
Oh, we could. Oh, okay. Right on. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's the final class, or like, there's a big paper, and I just meet with my professor once a week at our own designated time. It's not. I have to
Oh,
be-
rigid. It's not like a lecture. Gotcha.
Yeah, like- So.
Okay.
I'm free every day.
Meetings every night it is. No.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds like those would work, so let's keep those dates that were recommended. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Jack. Just got something. Is he?
Yes, yeah.
I could.
Yeah.
How we might come at some more things at the February 8th meeting for legislative and even congressional. See, last year, we were through our support of the Alaska Long Trail in partnership with Alaska Trails Association. We were close to getting over $3 million for the Carlo to Crabby pedestrian path, again, with the federal nexus hitting adjacent to the national park. It was passed by the legislature and then vetoed by the governor. And just today, talking with Alaska Trails, they recommended that we submit that as a CAPSIS project on our own. It would change our request. It would be a new request that I would bring forward maybe at the next meeting. So maybe anticipate another capital request that speaks to that project at the next meeting. And honestly, you know, with the way I think we should not just speak to the state, but I'll include federal language in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe as more things become known about the 2.8 million.
Yeah.
With a nexus that was
2.18.
2.18. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, if we can wrap.
0.65.
Yeah, see where that is and leverage that a little bit. I'm certainly curious. So cool. Thank you for that, Mayor Walker. And with that, we will adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
Night, Mr. Hammond. Night, Mr. Chapman.